Joe, the day is finally here. I still can't believe this is an idea we had pitched to us a while back, but here we are. Scott Snyder has now released the first issue of Clear, the second of his 8 creator-owned ComiXology books he's been working on. And of course, the first one was We Have Demons, which dropped on October 5th. And today, that's where our conversation will begin. But if I'm not mistaken, Joe, this isn't just going to be you and me discussing We Have Demons here on TLDR.
Yeah, baby, that's right. So not only am I excited to welcome back friend of the show, Scott Snyder.
Hey, how you guys doing? It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to have you back, Scott. How's Comic-Con been?
Oh my God, it was so great, but it was like the most. I'm getting so old. I'm like so tired by it. I loved it, every minute of it, and then I got home and I still am not recovered, and it's like 3 days later. So
I saw
the older you get,
pictures. Yeah.
But, yeah, you leave like a little part of your soul in the carpet somewhere at the time.
But that's not all, folks. We also have Scott's partner in crime, Greg Capullo. Greg, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Oh, jeez.
Hey guys. I didn't know you were ready for me yet.
How was Comic-Con for you, Greg? Holy smokes.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Oh, not too bad. How was Comic-Con for you? I know Scott had some fun. I saw you in the pictures as well, enjoying a little drink or two.
It felt great to see fans again, of course, and it was weird. I felt like a bank teller because the plexiglass with a little cutout to slide the money through. But, it's okay. And we were all cosplaying as healthcare workers with our masks. So,
yeah.
Very nice. Look at that.
Yeah, next time I'm going to use a blue gown and shit, So, but
just make sure it's tied up in the back, right?
That's
yeah. Wow.
But no, it's great. It's just great to see all my friends again, that are in the business, and all the fans, and we still recognize fans even with their masks on, because some of them we've seen so many times. You go, I know you. Good to see you again. And no, it was great. It was great.
Nice. So, of course, we want to talk about We Have Demons to start things off today. Greg, you drew this, and we want to ask you first, of course, you've done plenty of creator-owned books. Actually, Joe and I recently talked about Reborn on here, which you did with Mark Millar. But this is the first time that you've done it with Scott. And how does this compare to your previous experience with him?
Oh, well, I mean, the biggest thing is that, I have a freer schedule. We're not under that TikTok crushing deadline constantly, that you have when you are on a monthly book and things like that. But and then, of course, the other advantage is no one can tell you what you're doing is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do something. You just go, this is how it's going to be done. This is what it is. And it's because it's the way we want it and we own it. So step off. So, yeah. So that's a beautiful thing. And, so Scott and I we're just having the same fun we always had, but with a lot less restraint.
So, Scott, similar question for you. How has this process been for you working with Greg now that you have sort of those freer constraints in writing books?
It's the best. I mean, I think the hardest thing about working with Greg the whole 10 years that we worked at DC was watching how hard it was often on him and the art team, given the the monthly grind. Greg was someone who was so dedicated and passionate to the books that we were on that he rarely ever built in fill-ins or any of that stuff. I mean, there were only a couple on the entire 50+ issue run of Batman. So that often meant, like, just as much as we loved what we were doing, just physically, emotionally, psychologically, he was always working so hard. And, it was as the closer we became as friends, the more I really just was dying to get out of there with him to try something else, not because we didn't like it. I loved it. It was a dream job, but just getting to work in a way like this, where it's a lot freer. It's, there's not the same kind of continuity restraints. There's not the same pressure in terms of how much depends on every book to launch 100 things and all of it. Again, there's a different joy to making something that you own together. It's great seeing like the Batman Who Laughs in Fortnite this month, and the Court of Owls and Gotham Knights, and very proud of all that. But this is definitely, I think, the happiest and the most excited I've been is just being able to make things and call each other and be like, what if we do this? What if we do that? What if we make this toy or that? and having that kind of freedom is just really liberating and exciting.
When it came to We Have Demons, Scott, did you think of this initially and then realize Greg is the right artist for this? Or was this a conversation that you two kind of had together and then just kind of kept going from there, collaborating on it?
Definitely the latter. I mean, I would never be like to Greg, here's an idea, here's how it's going to go. Do you want to do it? We have a lot of ideas together. Some are his story ideas that I think are amazing. And the goal was just to pick something that we both felt would be a lot of fun as a breakout project. And so like, I'll tell him the basic concept and then we'll walk through the story and he'll have ideas and I'll have ideas and we'll design the character together, but before we start, both characters, main characters and all of it. So the whole joy of it is being collaborative from like the first stitch to the last on it. So none of it is, and that's true of all the books, but especially fun with Greg because we've done so much together that's been licensed. And we always work that way together on Batman too, where I tell him the concept and walk through and see if he liked it, take his ideas, into play, make sure that it was always collaborative that way in terms of structuring it and making it. But doing it like this, where it's yours, is a whole other level of collaboration. That's just really fun.
So, Greg, when you get a title like We Have Demons, we're all expecting things to be nuts and a bit bananas. And one of the things that, both Nick and I loved from the first issue, is the character Lamb. And so, what was the process of not just developing that character, but sort of giving that character her one arm? And is there going to be a greater significance to what we see beyond what we just see in that first issue?
Well, absolutely. The one arm thing, that wasn't an idea from mine. That's an integral part of that character and the script. And this will be fleshed out, less fleshed out because of the missing arm. But yes, it will be fleshed out, and there's a whole thing that surrounds that. So so that was just part of the thing that I had to include in the design, And Scott had this, give evil the middle finger type deal. And then he goes, and maybe when she flips the finger, the blade comes out and stuff. I love that, So anyway, so when I designed the character for Lamb, Scott gave me, the idea that maybe not necessarily goth, but a bit of an edge to her. So I give her a little, nose ring and give her unique. It's hard to give a unique look. So I gave that sort of bob cut, hair thing, and she had to be a little bit athletic, and so she's dressed in black, and she dresses dark and things like that. So I was just trying to make a memorable character, and then to give her sort of a slight stature to really be juxtaposed against our big character Gus, which originally was going to be named Elvis because Scott Snyder being the huge Elvis fan, and it being demons, Elvis. And when I heard him say Elvis, I was like, woo! I liked it. I liked it a lot. And but anyways, there's the insight on that. So anyway, I'm getting off because on the Elvis thing, but yeah. So designing her, it's just I don't know. I just follow my gut instincts. I sit down with a sketch pad and start doodling until it feels right. So I don't have like a formula so much.
Elvis, huh, Scott?
Yeah, and then I had him that way all in the script, and then I honestly, I know I overthought it. Greg was like, "You overthink I do overthink everything," but my worry was mostly that I don't want to be cut anywhere near close to Hellboy in that way, so I was concerned that it would be too close, like Hell in Hell. But his name, it's fun. He still has like the whole idea is that his name in his language has like hell in it, which is why his partner, Lamb's father, always wrote that in his date book whenever he had to hang out with him and go on a mission. But in case someone hasn't picked it up yet, because it just came out on last week, the premise is that this young woman, Lamb, finds out that her father, who she thought was this like sleepy town pastor, is actually part of a secret organization that hunts demons all over the world. And he's like he and his partner, his mysterious partner, Gus, who turns out to be the guy who was infected by the demon virus himself and like 10 feet tall and this huge character. We're like the super duo of demon slayers. And so he had this whole secret life, and she finds herself like thrown into this whole mythology and battle between good and evil that goes back like a billion years, literally. So it's a lot of fun. It's like big, over the top action and horror, but it like wears its heart on its sleeve. It's a personal book in that regard. So Yeah, watching Greg design her and Gus was like one of the joys of the whole process, as always, where the amount of detail he puts in, where he's like, well, what do you think of things I wouldn't even think of? Like, you know, he'll do a head sketch and then he'll be like, how does she feel, you know, about her dad, this, that, is she a little more guarded? Is she this? And then all of a sudden he adjusts the eyebrows, and it's amazing to watch characters come to life that way. And the level of detail that Greg goes into with the emotionality and the kind of posturing and all of it, it's really inspiring.
So, you know, Greg, how did you come up with the design, you know, for the demons, the god folk, as we first meet them in that first issue?
Well, that's interesting. Okay, so, you know, Scott from the get-go said, you know, he wanted them to look different than, you know, demons that we've all seen before. He said, I want the people to recognize that these are our demons. You know, these are Capullo Snyder demons. And so he had some ideas about what to do with the horns and things. And, you know, I tried a couple passes at that, and I don't think it was really hitting on target. And so we were talking about, you know, like plates and stuff on the head. And it dawned on me, you know, because you see, you know, caterpillars and butterflies and different animals that have false eyes, you know. And so I came out with the idea of having all of our demons have like these false eyes on their head plate. And so I got it away from the horns, you know, and got away from most other things you would associate with demons, and gave it our signature look by adding that as our telltale sign that it's ours. And from there, I played with the horns, and I came out with, you know, having you know, sort of like hot spots that come through the horns, you know, sort of like they're coursing, that lava's coursing through their veins, and you could see it through the cracks and things like that. And so, you know, those two things are kind of like the ideas I came up with to give it, you know, our signature look.
And Scott, I know when you talk about collaborating, right, with anybody, with any artist, you go and he or she is going to give you some feedback and, you know, take you in certain directions that maybe you didn't initially plan. And I'm curious, is there anything that Greg offered up in the early stages of, you know, planning We Have Demons that kind of changed the course and how you wanted to handle a character or a certain subject matter in the course of the story?
Well, there always is. I mean, I respond to what he does all the time. That's part of the fun, is like getting something back from him and then adds an idea to the story when I see it, you know? So there were whole things about her arm and the secret behind what really happened to her and why she lost it, and all sorts of stuff that come from looking at the kind of amazing stuff he comes up with visually. Mm-hmm. And that's the fun, is the give and take of that, you know? So it's like, I'll give him an idea for basic sort of bones of the story. He'll come back with designs for things that feeds my imagination about where to take the story. I go back to him, he comes back with more, and it's that kind of a process. So it's always a give and take that way with it. So it really is like, you know, truly by both of us in that regard, where there's not like, it's not a book that like I wrote and he drew. It's like, it would be a different book story-wise, structurally, everything, if it was with someone else. But this was something that was built from the first elements, like with him, the same way the other books are with the other artists, you know? And
okay, well, that's good to hear, because I was worried that you were the one trying to hack off, you know, 15-year-old girls, or was she 5 years old when she got her arm hacked off? And then the beginning of that too, the first page of art we see, and then like the last little thing is like, you know, she's breaking out the axe, and it's like, what the heck is going on here? And then of course you take us in different directions in true Scott Snyder's fashion, but when you had her arm hacked off by her, you know, her father, it's like, a what? Huh? Yeah. But
yeah, there's a definitely like a level of like freedom, I think, in this book, where freedom. The second issue, the first issue is narrated from her point of view, and the second issue is narrated from Gus. And similarly, like, it's a lot of fun. He's like a restrained character in his language, because one of the first things that happens when you get infected by the demon sort of material, the horn, is that it plays to all your worst instincts. So you can tell someone's infected usually because they start to use bad language, like inappropriately and stuff at first. So there's a lot of fun there with that too, where it's like he's like, right, it opens with him just like with the biggest string of like horrible curse words, and then he starts cursing in his own language that's like a dead language.
Or are they wonderful curse words?
Yes, they'll be fun. They're like all made up words that are amazing letter Tom is going to do in like higher, like, you know, like ancient things.
Oh, okay.
And then Lamb is like, what did that mean? He's like, you don't want to know. Like, and then she's like, come on. And then he tells her off like this. He tells her, and she's like, how is that even physically possible? And he's like, our species has wider hips than yours. It's fun. Like, I couldn't do that in a DC comic, you know?
Right?
No. We know. Heroes don't do that.
Heroes don't do that. Yeah, absolutely. It's spot on. So, Greg, I'm curious. Obviously we've met two characters more so than anybody else. Well, one a little bit later on, I guess, in the story. But who is your favorite character so far in the early stages of We Have Demons?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a team that's going to be introduced in the next coming issue, and there's a couple characters on that team that I like to draw, and especially this little plump dude, Irish dude, who's in it, and I like drawing him a lot, and his partner, who is well, you'll see him but they're a real odd couple, and I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun with character drawings and ones where I get to maybe exaggerate their features a little bit. And I did that on the upcoming team, which you're about to be introduced to soon.
Nice. Plump Irish dude sounds like he's drawing me.
Yeah, there you go, Joe. Look at that. You made it.
Look, Greg, it's the seltzer. When we were at the con, he thought I was drinking beer, but it's a LaCroix. That's just what it is. It was just a green one of these.
But that was to wash down your whiskey, though.
Right.
I did. Well, that's because I already had the whiskey. So I was like, I know my, I don't have a whiskey. I'm not gonna have whiskey and then drink 2 beers at the signing or whatever.
Oh, Greg. So, your work has always been, the best of the best, and and that's on full display here. And We Love Demons. I mean, the artwork in this book is absolutely fantastic. And it seems that whenever you work with Scott, your art seems to, get kicked up a notch. Is there something about the way, Scott writes a story that brings a little something extra out in you? Or is it just a matter of Scott just letting you have freedom to ball out and draw what you want?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see it that happens. The level that you see in my artwork is really based on how much time I have, and that's really the truth. I mean, I had more time on Reborn, so you had more on Reborn than you saw on some of the Batman stuff and different things like that. So, obviously it's fun and inspiring to work with Scott, but he gets from me, you get the most out of me if you get out of my way and give me more time, obviously. So I just see. What you're seeing is probably just a product of that, of Greg has more time and Scott just lets him do what he wants to do mostly. So, that's what you're doing.
I'll also say, I can't say enough good things about Reborn and how amazing your art is on that. And one of the first people who wrote, actually just today, he wrote again because he put it in his newsletter because he's to talk about how much he liked the book, was Mark Miller. And couldn't be more kind. He's one of the biggest supporters, and I can't say enough good things about him and what he's done for creators and everything as well.
Yeah, that was a fun book for sure. And Greg, we know you got to get going before we continue our conversation with Scott. We wanted to ask you one last question to send you off with. Of Scott's other 7 ComiXology Best Jacket Dark Horse books that are coming out, of course, Clear is already out now as we're doing this. Which one are you most excited for?
See, now that's a terrible question to ask because I'm friends with everybody who's worked with.
We're all friends.
So I asked you, I want to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
I'm doing my job. Sorry.
I'm looking forward to them all equally. That's it, man.
That's a good answer. We have demons too.
Yeah. There you go. All these guys are my friends, and I'm a fan of all of them. So I'm excited for all of them, and I wish every book success. Of course, I wish ours the most success. Sorry,
and
guys.
the truth comes out. There it is.
So that's it.
Greg, thanks so much for taking the time to hang out with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate it immensely.
Back to the drawing board.
I already miss you, man, but I get to see you again in like 5 days.
Next weekend, brother.
It'll be good.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. So it is time to actually, before we move on to the Clear, because we want to go there next, we didn't get to ask you this, Scott. Who is your favorite character so far in the early stages of writing We Have Demons?
Oh, well, it was definitely, at first it was Gus because I know his whole history and it's really rich and sort of, he has those secret layers where, you learn more and more about him and kind of what happened to his tribe. For anyone that hasn't read it, not to spoil anything, but he's part of, I love like all things about evolution and strange human inflection points and all that stuff. It's in American Vampire and a lot of other things like witches. I just love the idea of strange kind of branches of genealogy. Mm-hmm. And Gus is part of a human species that went extinct alongside the Neanderthals and Homo erectus and that none of us know about, but is responsible for all these myths of like, you know, the Nephilim and the Atlanteans and all the strange advanced civilization that like went down and disappeared from the earth around that same time. And so they were supposed to be us. They were supposed to be like the dominant human species, but they were infected by this stuff. And so they tore each other apart and then destroyed other species of man and all of this stuff. And he was preserved in this way that I won't spoil, but he's kind of the last of his kind. And so he's got that odd man out of time, Captain America sort of feel that I love in characters, you know, that the like Skinner Sweet and all that sort of, that feeling of someone that is from a period that's gone and everyone they know is gone. And that feeling of like, of wisdom, but also of sadness around them. So I like him because he's this big hulking badass, but he's got a big heart. But Lamb, then I started writing Lamb for the issue, and it was way more fun than writing him, even though I love writing him, don't get me wrong, but her voice was so easy for me. It was like, I just really loved it. I kind of used a lot of my sort of 14-year-old son in that, in that voice a bit. So, there are characters that I adore, and it's one of those books where as we're doing it, I'm like, oh man, I wish we had like 2 more issues for this arc, but we have enough. We have like, it's the equivalent of almost 6 issues. It's like 5. It's 3 super packed issues of 34 pages each. So it's like over 100 pages, which is over 5 issues. So it's like, you know, normal length for an arc, but it's, I love them. So my hope is that you guys out there will pick it up. The way to do it, by the way, just to explain what we're doing at ComiXology, is that ComiXology Originals has been kind enough to purchase like 8 books from me, from Best Jacket, and my co-creators. And what we're doing is we're releasing 3 this month. So We Have Demons came out last week. Clear comes out today with me and Francis Manipal. And then Night of the Ghoul with Francesco Francavilla comes out next week. Mm-hmm. And then the 4th week, we're doing like a sampler. I think it's like 99 cents or something, where it's going to show you previews of all the other books with pages and art and designs and that stuff. And the goal is to try and encourage people to get a subscription to ComiXology Unlimited, because if you get a subscription, it's the cost of one, comic a month. But you get all of the books. So you get all 3 of the books. Clear, We Have Demons #1, Clear #1, Ghoul #1 for the price of 1 book. And we're going to continue to do those 3 books for, Demons for the 3 months, because it's 3 issues, 3 big, the last one's, I think 36 or whatever. Then we're going to do Clear and Ghoul are 6 issues. And when those are over, the next wave of books starts. So you'll always have multiple books coming out kind of in a month from us over there. And it'll make your subscription worth it. The reason I really believe in it is because when the pandemic hit, it got me thinking a lot about both the health of the industry and affordability, all these different things. And I really feel like, as much as I know it's kind of a controversial thing, digital for me has always been like the way that I've browsed things before I buy them physically for a long time, at least now, not just for comics, but I see it with my kids, and all of us do it for everything now. For music, you stream it. Then if you love it, you go buy the vinyl, you go buy the box set, you go buy. Same with books. Like my kids still read manga and read comics online, and then they go buy the trades. My son has all these X-Men trades and, all the stuff. And that's what I really think comics is kind of headed towards in a way. It doesn't because even when I was a kid, you could easily bypass the comic store by getting a physical subscription. You go to the comic store, I think, for the experience, for the community, and to buy the stuff in a place where you can meet retailers that are, experienced and fun and wise and will give you recommendations. And then you have collectible things that you love that are tactile for your house that are there. And my hope is that it really winds up helping the stores the same way books like Deceased did really well as digital first and then went over, or Injustice like digital first and then went over and were these massive hits in the direct market. And what we're doing with the line is that we're doing some books in different formats. So some will be collected edition, some will be single issue. And that way, depending on whether or not the direct market, I think, would support them in that regard, whatever they fit best. So the whole goal is to make something that says, come in, the water's great in comics for a low price. You can browse not just our comics, but ComiXology Unlimited allows you like 40,000 plus comics, some of which are the things that made me want to write, like Sandman and Swamp Thing and Dark Knight Returns, and others by really emergent, exciting new voices. So that's kind of the whole project in a nutshell. And then the books all do come out, like I was saying, in print from Dark Horse about 6 months after they come out digitally. So we're doing both, like direct market, digital, the whole thing. But it's like a whole actual line of books that, I really love in that regard.
I'm echoing there.
Yep, I don't know what's going on. Let me try one thing. Go ahead.
Better?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. So what I was going to say is I've been a ComiXology Unlimited member for a while now. And, I still every week go into the comic shop. I grab my books from Marvel. I grab my books from Boom, AWA, Image. I still grab my physical books. But, what I love about ComiXology is, maybe there's a book that I can't find at the local comic shop that is in full trade there, and I grab it, and it's great. Jeff Lemire's Snow Angels was a ComiXology original. Absolutely loved it. Talked about it on the show. So, it's a great service, and it's not like it deprives me from or keeps me from going in to the store, because I still do like having those physical books or collecting those physical trades. So I think this whole thing is very unique, and when we first saw it announced, we were very intrigued by it. Now that it's rolling out, it's something that I know Nick and I are very excited for. And so with that, I want to get into the clear, because I was saying, before we went on the air here, it's like we love We Have Demons, loved it, like, oh my god, this is great. And then I read the clear and I go, oh my god, this is fucking great. It's like each book, it's just they're so great, and they're so very different. And so when I was reading this, Scott, I got a very Maltese Falcon vibe when reading it. That mystery story, that noir. Both set in San Francisco. You've got Sam Spade in one, Sam Dunes in the other. Was that an inspiration for you when writing this comic?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge, like, all of those guys, Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler, and I love noir, and have always loved mystery and thriller and all of that stuff, both in film but in books especially too. So it was what I wanted to do is I had Francis was staying at my house. It was a few years ago. And we became friends a long time ago, when he was when we were doing, I was on Batman and he was on Detective and that stuff. And we've always really gotten along, and we kept talking about doing Create Our Own. And same thing I did with Greg with We Have Demons. I kind of took a very basic idea that had been like in the back of my head. And I was like, what about something out of this? And I said to him, like, one of the things that I'm really frightened of, and this is back in like 2016, 2017, was the way in which it felt like in this extremely accelerated way, everybody, including our kids, were being kind of enticed into this algorithmic way of experiencing the world, where everything is just giving you more of what you already like Spotify to Amazon to Google to, everything, Facebook, everything is saying, oh, you like that? Have this, and those are not bad, search engines and all of that stuff, and those kind of the algorithms, I understand their purpose entirely. But you just see everybody kind of falling into more and more isolated bubbles of what they choose to believe or like, and in such a way that they're never challenged. I'd love it if once in a while my kids had something thrown at them that was unsettling, or was outside their comfort zone. And I think that's one of the things I loved about growing up in New York City, was that you're in this public space and you're surrounded by a lot of cultures and things that and people and experiences, all of it, that you're not prepared for in different ways, or you're not, that don't always make you comfortable, in a way that you need to learn about other people and learn about things that don't immediately seem familiar to you. And so we started playing with this idea, and I said, what if there was like a way that everyone could just skin the world however they wanted? And that was the visual sort of trick of the book. And Francis loved it and was like, well, then I can draw whatever I want, like a buffet of like anything anyone wants to see. And so the premise of the book is like, it's a murder mystery that takes place in a near future, where everybody connects to the internet neurologically at this point, because big tech figured out a way to do it. And what everyone does is veil the world. They call it veiling, when you skin it or filter it however you want. So like if you look out, the superstructure legally still has to be there. But if you want your car to look like a different car, or more importantly, like if you want to look out and see medieval filter, everything looks like that. If you want to look out and see zombie apocalypse filter, everything looks like that. If you want to pay a little bit more and have a filter where it's a history that didn't happen, where we lost or won a war, you can do that. And you can, so everyone sort of has their own subjective reality. And the detective, Sam Dunes, he keeps his setting on clear all the time, which is supposed to be the objective way of perceiving the world. And so it's one of those mysteries that starts off small, you know, like Chinatown, and then gets a lot bigger, and it is about sort of big systemic things happening in this world. So I love it. Francis will tell you it's his best work. I definitely agree. And I'm just honored and proud to be on it with him. And it's a 6-issue series. It's big. It's like 2 30-page issues and 4 20-page issues. And so it's a sizable book. And then if people pick it up and like it, we have a second one in mind that we want to do. And We Have Demons, same thing. I mean, We Have Demons is designed as an ongoing. And it really just depends. From the looks of it, we're going to keep it going, because we got our initial things and they were really way beyond what we had hoped. So my hope is that if it continues, then we'll continue as long as people want it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Paul's art is. I wrote it in my review today for Geeks Worldwide, where it's like he was able to take such vivid and beautiful colors and make them, you know, cast a world of, you know, bleak and, you know, hopelessness. Like, it was just amazing what he did, you know, with his use of the colors. And so you've got this sort of dystopian, you know, set future here that's actually only really 30 years down the road from now. You know,
we're screwed. Shit.
Yeah. So like books like Nocterra, for example, you know, or other, you know, dystopian set, you know, stories, is more supernatural aspects to it. There's more, maybe, you know, something, you know, more sinister going on. But with the Clear, it really is, you know, the threat of sort of escapism and technology that's creating this sort of downfall, where we literally have to use rose-colored glasses to see the world. Is that like how you perceive like the direction that we're going? And is that your biggest fear?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we talked about, me and Francis, being, you know, one of our biggest fears for our kids is that there doesn't seem to be sort of a desire or a push for like a collective middle or even a collective reality anymore, where it feels as though as problems deepen and things get systemically like harder to deal with, you know, the economy or climate change or whatever, we're encouraged more and more to kind of retreat into just separate, isolated belief systems. And I do think that it's the most resonant, probably, or immediate or urgent of the books, that all of them are about things happening now. Like the one, like Demons, is definitely about that. But Ghoul also, the monster in the Ghoul is like the monster that would be scary in this moment. It's like a creature that hides in a human host while it develops a horrible plague over 100 years that will level a civilization and remind everybody, when things get too complicated and myopic or egotistical, that it's about survival, you know, collective survival, not just you and your. So that it's a horror story, but it has like again, underpinnings that speak to this moment. So all the books are that way in one way or another. They're all personal to me and my co-creator, but Clear is the one that I think is probably the most piercingly immediate, like about this moment in a more kind of urgent way than some of the other ones, you know?
Mm-hmm. And when Joe brought up Nocterra and how, of course, you have, you know, the big PM and everything, where like it all begins at that one point when the lights go out. But with this, you know, Joe's talking about how you don't have that one event. At least we haven't seen it in the first issue. Of course, you could bring it in later on, and that could be off. But why not decide to have something like that lead to this veil in this situation? Does it just feel like, do you want it to have a natural feel? Is that the goal?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I'd be not doing my part if I didn't say Noctera Volume 1. Tomorrow, our first big arc from Image. I'm really proud of it. But
so good.
Yeah.
Right. I always say to my students too, I'm like, because look, we just did this thing and ComiXology was like, let's call it SCOTTober. And I was like, that's so shameless. Do I do that? And like, you know what? Why not? Fuck it, right? Because my feeling is like that if you're gonna if you love the work, there's no shame in being out there on a unicycle juggling and flaming whatever for attention with it. And I did it for DC for a lot of years, and because I love the books we were doing, and now I love these, and so why not? But yes, so I was like out there being like SCOTTober, SCOTTober, and all of that stuff with that. But I think, I love. What was the question again?
I was asking with Clear, why did you not?
Right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I remember. Sorry about that. I'm still so trampled by the con.
It's the bourbon, Scott. It's the bourbon.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. It's the LaCroix.
Yeah.
If only it was like hard whatever seltzer, but no.
We have other problems, and it's 2:13.
It was funny because we had a drink at the con, and then Greg was like thinking I was like pounding beer at the thing, but it was literally LaCroix.
Yeah.
And I was like, he didn't know it was water. I was like, dude, it's not beer. But the thing with Clear, you do actually learn in the second issue that there was like a beginning, like what I wanted with it was not for there to be a big cataclysmic thing, but for there to be kind of a series of smaller things with one thing that really began the slide, or exacerbated it. Cause I feel like we're sliding that way now, where there's a feeling of like, if we don't get it right in the next 4 or 5 years of figuring out a way to be able to not be more excited to see people we don't like lose than winning in a real way together, even if it's a compromised win with people that don't agree with you, then, I think we're done for, in a lot of ways as a kind of dominant or superpower nation. It just feels like we're just so fractious and so, divided, and not even just divided, but like I see it where I live. And the feeling with what happens in Clear is that the big thing that kind of pushes people over the edge that you'll see in the very beginning of the second issue is Dunes was a part of this too, and it's mentioned in the first issue, but there's something called the Red War where we have a skirmish, like a 3-day skirmish with China and Russia in the South China Sea. And it's this moment when we think we're going to kind of go there and show them they can't just invade Taiwan and do these things. And we fire missiles and, just little local battle, but it's like they have a smaller Navy there. And the minute the missiles go out, all of a sudden cyberbugs and they come back like this at us and destroy the fleet. And after that, they're like, well, what about our cyberbugs? And like, theirs are better, whatever. But within a few days, we just retreat and let them have that area. And there's no huge fight. There's no nuclear war. There's no post-apocalyptic whatever. It's just kind of a deciding that we're just not up to it, and that we've been outplayed. And that demoralization, instead of kind of rising to the occasion in this future, it adds to this kind of fuel, I think, for people to retreat into their own subjective realities, where why look out and try and really do things that seem really hard at that time, like, how to lift up everything again, when you can just live in a reality where we won that war and somebody does. Like, they just live in a subjective thing where we beat those nations and we won that war and everything looks great. Mm-hmm. So there's a kind of there are precipitating events that I think speak to fears that are really urgent right now too, like that are about this moment, but there's no kind of huge bomb drop thing. It's more like it's like I feel like we're going like this now towards that, and then this book shows you how you go like that quicker.
Right. And it's interesting too how you're doing Undiscovered Country, you're doing Nocterra, and then you're doing Clear, where they're all dealing with the dystopian setting, where some creators may not want to go to a certain type of genre too often, but you've given a different feel each time. Where yes, it still feels like a Scott Snyder book, but you're still approaching it in a different way every single time. Where it's just you're not pulling from one another, even though you're dealing with a similar subject. So that's another little interesting thing I noticed with Clear too.
Thanks.
But when we go, you brought up the Night of the Ghoul, which I was, reading that, and the Ghoul, like what blew me away with this story is the Ghoul feels like a creature that's been around since the 40s. But obviously we haven't, and I'm not just saying that because of the way things are set, but it feels like it's been around since like Frankenstein, even those days. But we haven't heard of this character ever before. But like you gave it this feel where it's like, yeah, this thing's been around forever. We're just like, how the hell did you guys not know about this shit? And I'm just curious, like, what was that intentional part of the process, and like how has that become a challenge has that become a challenge as the story has unfolded further?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, that was exactly the process, and I went back and reread Court of Owls when I was doing it for that reason, where I wanted to kind of make sure that I felt confident in the way that it was placing things in the past without it seeming like intrusive or that I was like shoving it in there. So I tried to be really careful about making it this kind of, it's famous because it was a movie and you can accept it if it was like in this fictional tale, and then slowly build out from that it was real, so that it's not like in your face too early, but it's this creeping dread throughout the whole book. And it's another one that it's over 6 issues, but oversized 1 in 6. That leads you to believe over time in this claustrophobic kind of spiraling terror way that everything in the movie is real and has existed forever in that. So it sort of reverse engineers it, reverse engineers the real history of the Ghoul through watching the kind of fictional movie in that way, which I think is it was a fun trick to play in the book. But yeah, it's the thing I love about that book too, is that it's got like this double helix structure where one half of it is the fragments of this great lost horror film that we made up called Night of the Ghoul. And it's because the premise of the story is that this guy who's kind of a loser who always wanted to be in film, but wound up like digitizing old movies, stumbles on the remnants of this film that was lost in a studio fire that killed a bunch of people. That was supposed to be like the greatest horror movie of all time called Night of the Ghoul. And he tracks down the writer-director who's still alive in hospice care. He's like 100 years old out in the California desert. And he goes there to interview him and be like, I know who you are, what happened that night, and what happened to this film. And as the story progresses, it cuts back and forth from the black and white fragments of the film and this burned celluloid kind of effect that Francesco does so well, and the present day story where the main character, Forrest, and his son are interviewing this guy, T.F. Merritt, who admits that was his movie and has a deep sort of seemingly at first delusional belief that the Ghoul is real and is in the building and has been for many years and is coming to kill them all that night. So it's a really sort of tight, twisted book in all kinds of ways. But the fun of it is like it allows me and Francesco to explore our love of classic horror, but do it in a way that's really modern and violent and terrifying now too in the same book. So totally different. Yeah. And then we have some of the other books too. I mean, like with Tula, doing a historical fiction book that's like no monsters, no gore, no supernatural anything, just literally like a historical fiction book about a pilot who crashes into a party and then meets this runaway bride, and the two of them have this whole adventure. And another one that's part prose and part graphic illustration with Jock called The Book of Evil, about a future where 99% of the world's population are born psychopaths, and
that sounds messed up, man. You and Jock, getting back together. What was his first thing since it's Batman Who Laughs, right?
Oh, Batman Who Laughs. That's right. Yes. Yeah, super vicious. And it's told from the point of view of a kid in that time who's like writing in his journal, so it's like written like that, and then he draws what he sees, so it's all violent. We have a Western with Dan Panosian and a manga influenced one with Raphael Albuquerque, and then a YA book with Jamal Igle about so it's just a whole it's a whole ecosystem of stuff that I'm really excited about, over the course of the next year and a half.
So with a lot of these artists, sorry, my voice just cracked. Jeepers. With a lot of these artists, you've had previous experience working with before, but some of them, I believe, is your first time working with them. So how did those books come together in terms of collaboration and wanting to work with them or having them be the right fit for that particular story?
Well, it was always we were friends, so like Jamal and I go back all the way to my first year in comics. We were at a signing together at Jim Hanley's Universe and became friends when he was still on Supergirl and I was starting out, on Detective and that stuff. And he's a New Yorker and me too, and we have kids the same age, so we've always been friendly. And it was a couple years ago where we started talking and being like, what if we did a creator owned and we'd like to do something for our kids and something that they could even help with a bit and make it dark, but also accessible. And Lisa Tula, who I've only worked with sort of tangentially on an issue of Batman, and that she runs Thought Bubble, and we got to know each other when my wife and I went there years ago, and really became very close. And so we've been talking about doing something forever. And same thing. I had this idea and talked to her. Is this something you'd like? And she built it out with me and so on. So it's always kind of like, I have a couple people like Ariella Cristantina, I'm doing a book with them called Chain down the line, where that one, her work was brought to my attention by Will, and I really loved it. And I realized I had read a bunch of it on Insects with Marguerite Bennett. And then I'll go and say, listen, I have a book that I think fits your style. Do you like it? And so it's sometimes, it'll come from like a connection with their work or a connection personally in that regard. And then just making sure that whatever project we're doing it fits both of us and that they're really comfortable adding to it and building on it and all of that.
All of these titles seem like, ones that Joe and I absolutely want to read. We're really excited for them to come later on in the year. Of course, the Book of Evil is coming out on the 19th of October. Book of Evil, Night of the Ghoul is coming out on the 19th. But when I did not realize in the course of things, shame on me because this is in the synopsis, that Duck and Cover, as much as I knew it with you and Raphael Albuquerque, of course, you guys did American Vampire and the recent American Vampire 2, that was 10 issues in the end, right, Scott?
10 issues, yeah.
Yeah. So I did not realize this was manga influenced. I'm curious, like, how did you guys decide what made you guys decide to do that?
Well, it's not, just to be clear, it's influenced in the way that it's kind of, in its like subject matter and it's slightly in its pacing and that stuff. So it's not like going to come out in volumes that way. Mm-hmm. But it's my kids' love of it and me falling in love with it again, too. I love the original, like the OG anime stuff and manga from Akira, Megazone 23, and Battle Angel Alita and Vampire Hunter D. Like that's like my generation stuff, Robotech and all of that. And then now they love Attack on Titan and Death Note and Naruto and My Hero Academia and all that. So I wanted to do something that felt like hyper emotional, kind of adolescent, but over the top, bombastic, crazy fun. And so that one, Duck and Cover, it's about a nuclear exchange that happens in the 1956 and between Russia and the United States, like when we're on the brink of nuclear war and we actually launch all these missiles. And it's about a town in Colorado, and like everything is pretty much obliterated except kids that hid under their desks, like in those old PSA commercials, those old, like where it's like hide under your desk in case of a nuclear war. And then they did, and all of them survive, and their desks are perfectly preserved. And they kind of are there, and they're like, realize only kids that did this around the country are still around, and they start to develop abilities. And it's like a kind of The Stand's, like really big teenage 1950s styled kind of Lord of the Flies kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun. It's got like that 1950s aesthetic, but it's post-apocalyptic. And it's kids with powers in that whole world, and maybe the Russians are invading and all that. So it's like it's like American Vampire in a lot of ways, that it takes Americana and like remixes it. And
okay,
so I love it.
So we've got horror, Americana, sci-fi. You've got demons. You've got a wide range of books here, and we even get a little Western action here with Canary. What can you tell us about Canary?
Yeah, Dan is somebody who I got to know years ago, like Drink and Draw, and at cons, and I've always loved his work. I love slots. And so we started talking a few years ago about doing something, and then we started squirreling away work on this a while back. It's about a mine that collapses and a marshal that's called to investigate it because there's been too many murders around this town where this mine collapsed. And so it has this really twisted element to it where he goes there and he tries to discover what happened at the mine that's causing this effect in the surrounding towns. And he starts to discover that there might be an element like instead of gold that they were mining for something else that seeped into the water. And so it's like a very dark, twisted Western, but it's also like a Western and, like in 1879 and the whole thing. And so it's a lot of fun. And Dan's art is like just unbelievable on it. I can't say enough good things about him. He's coloring himself and he's got plenty of room and it's just beautiful. So that's the thing about all the books is they're just, I could like write the phone book over them and they'd still be good because the art's so good. And that's the fun is just to do creator owned where people have all the room and all the time, like Greg was saying, to make something they're proud of without the same grinds and the same pressure.
So when I know with all of these, this is like, these are all personal books to you, of course. I mean, whether it's creator owned or not, you're talking about personal stories. When you talk about The Court of Owls and how it was personal for you. And we've gone down that road with you before. But I also know whenever you're writing stuff, there's going to be some level of growth as you explore these characters more, both for the characters and for you. And I'm curious with these other books, and you could even throw in the 3 that are coming out this month as well. Is there one where you feel like more so than any other that you're gonna, or you already have gone outside of your comfort zone as you've been writing these?
Oh yeah. I mean, they're all interesting to me in that they push me in different ways. Like even We Have Demons, which like Noctera is the most comfort food out of them for me, are both done in ways that I haven't tried. Like Greg and I working the way we're working and doing R-rated and doing there changes to the way we work with that, and there's a level of freedom that is fun to play with, but also scary because it's risky and different for our fans. And Noctera is similar in that it's right up my alley in horror action, but trying to pack a really big mythology into 3 arcs and do an experiment where a book that you think could survive like The Walking Dead for a really long time is almost like an anti-Walking Dead, even though, I mean, I love that book for what it is too, but the idea that every time you return to it at arc after arc, the danger and the mythology gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you realize like, wow, this has a whole cosmology I didn't see coming where the shades are part of this whole thing and, what the darkness really is and what happened. And so like Lost, but compressed a little bit. So, anyway, but the ones that push me, I mean, Barnstormers really is a stretch because it's done with that's the historical fiction one, and it's really different. Like it's, going back to like my prose roots almost, where it's a big rollicking kind of dark adventure where these 2 kids that run away together essentially and are both misfits decide to take it up on themselves to like fly onto these beautiful properties. It takes place in like 1920, 21. So it's the Gatsby era. Fly onto these parties where rich people are just kind of partying that summer, even though there was just a pandemic and a world war, and rob the places while they're all partying, go in and get dressed up and dance and drink and then secretly steal everything that nobody's looking at. And eventually, this guy they get found out and it becomes more of a doomed love story. But I love the book for that. It's very much a mirror of some of the things I worry about right now for our kids, like it's this moment that feels quiet and sort of, worrisome, but uneventful compared to what came before and what could come after. And then there are people I think that, are ignoring it and just being like, let's party, because you have the money and you can, and that's that and that. And so there's a strange parallel, I think, to 100 years ago from right now. And so the book is both beautiful and fun, but it's, it has those underpinnings as well. So that one is probably, and Book of Evil is another one that, as much as it's my comfort zone and its subject matter, is really dark, like really dark, because as the kids in that world, you present one way or another, like whether you're going to turn into a normal person, which is like a psychopath, or like a kind of a A dysfunctional person, which is someone with empathy and conscience, which is only like 1% of the population at that point, and then you get thrown to do like all the shittiest jobs, and you can get killed whenever you want. And by the way, like society runs great with all the psychopaths in this world.
Oh,
It's
That's a
not like
twist.
apocalyptic at all, but it's scary because like you have very strict rules, and if you break the rules, people can kill you. So like as a kid, you have to remain in this area that until you present one way or another, called the cradle. And if you go out of that slum neighborhood, you can be eaten or killed or anything anyone wants to do to you. And so the kids realize before they present, before they go one way or another, they want to run away and see if there's a place where they can stave off the transformation. And so it's like Stand By Me, where it's like these 5 kids running away. And it's written by one of the kids. And so I love it, but it's my comfort zone in some ways, but writing prose again is really outside my comfort zone, and having Jock do the spot illustrations as opposed to doing the sequential art is different, and all of it. It's exciting though. I mean, that's what I love about it. I would be really bored if it was all like the same thing that I've done before, I'd feel like a fraud. So I feel like this really pushes me into a zone that's like, maybe I'll fall on my face, but that's okay.
Well, you're kicking ass. That's for damn sure. So we have Demons, Clear, and Night of the Ghoul coming out this month. What are the next batch of books coming out, Scott? And then how far into 21 will those keep going? Or sorry, 2022.
Right now we're slated to do kind of the same thing in March, which depending on how the sales, depending on what ComiXology wants to do, if they want to do what we did this time and do 1, 2, 3 in a row, like a weekly rotation that way, we'll do that. And that would be Barnstormers, Canary, and Dudley Dotson. And then the third wave will be Book of Evil, because prose takes a little longer, and Duck and Cover, because Raphael is working on something right now, but we'll start working together soon.
Oh.
So that's kind of the idea, is to do, as soon as these end, those start in March. Whether or not we'll do them this way, where it's weekly, or do them March, April, May, and then when those are due the next 2, I'm not sure. It all depends on like them and the data and how they think will best work for the subscribers and make them happiest. So they'll take all kinds of polls, and if you see one or whatever, and you're a subscriber, put out your opinion how you'd like to read the books.
Now, want them now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already the early response for them was very exciting to see that, it surpassed expectations and that stuff with We Have Demons, then Today Clear. So really thrilled and grateful to everyone who's giving it a shot. So those are the ones, that's kind of the rollout. And again, the goal is to be like, I'm sure it would like serve me better if I was like, don't get a subscription, buy every issue on its own, because we'd probably make more money that way. But ultimately, like, we believe in what we're doing with it. And I can tell you, like, I know that there's always the kind of specter of digital taking over and Amazon owning ComiXology. But the truth is, like, the people at ComiXology, Chip and the other people there, they're deep comic people. Like, Chip is, Mosher knows everybody in comics and is, a long time, he was at Boom and everything. And, for us, like, they sponsor Artist Alleys and cons. They sponsor Thought Bubble. They care about comics, and doing a direct market deal with Dark Horse is about showing the ways in which these things are confluent, not competing. Mm-hmm. So the goal is to try and strengthen comics and to allow you to get a subscription so that you can go and fall in love with comics the way so many people did during the pandemic, rediscover the hobby and the childhood joy of it, and then the adult joy and coming back to the store and on the other side of it. So that's what we're trying to do, and what I know everybody at ComiXology is passionate about too.
Yeah, that's part of the sorry, Nick, but that's part of the reason why we started the show, is because Nick and I wanted to talk comics, as we couldn't go into the comic book shop anymore. Everything was shut down. So, it's been absolutely a joy to, like, the bright side, one of the bright sides, out of all that shit that happened was that, and rediscovering a love of books and all that.
Yeah, and of course, if you listen to the show and you don't have a ComiXology Unlimited subscription already, I don't know what you guys are doing, but make sure you go do that so you can go read all of Scott's books that are out now. Of course, we got the third issue of his 8 books coming out, or third series of his 8 books coming out on October 19th. So make sure you get that so you can go read that right away. Scott, we really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us again. It's been a lot of fun, whether it's been death metal, Nocterra, or now all of this SCOTTober stuff. We've really enjoyed it. So thank you again for taking the time.
Oh, I love being on here with you guys, Nick and Joe. I really appreciate it. Anytime you want, I'm always happy to get to chat with you guys. It's a blast.
Thank you very much.
I hide my enthusiasm. I just can't.
All right, we'll check in with you again down the line, Scott. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Joe, until next time, stay sexy.